Hello and welcome to the Better Ways podcast with me, Tom.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
Hi. Well, Jamie, nothing much has happened this week, so have we
No,
got
it's been
anything
it's
at
been
all to talk
boring.
about?
Nothing. No, it's been really boring. Just strong and stable. Strong and
Strong
stable
and
leadership.
stable.
That's the.
Yeah. I think we both agree we've had that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So should we talk about the cataclysmic events in Downing Street over the last 7 days?
Yeah, probably best to.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Yeah. So shall we go with? Well, let's go back a little bit. So Kwasi Kwarteng being fired,
Hmm.
Jeremy Hunt coming in and ditching every single thing that our former Prime Minister won her
Yeah.
her role on, if you like, her campaign on. And then she getting booted out by the Conservative Party, basically.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. And there's talk of Boris coming back.
Not
My
just
God.
talk. Not just talk. I think he could win. But yeah.
Well, it doesn't look like he's got 100 votes from the MPs yet.
I don't know.
Raise a fin,
There's
maybe.
350 of them, so.
Yeah,
Or
that is true. That is
357,
true.
so.
What's
Uh,
hilarious is that people that abandoned him and
yeah.
ran. He's the man to lead us through. Your knife is still in his back.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
the people who've flocked both ways, aren't there? Those
yeah,
that have abandoned him and those that have also come and supported him for the first time. So,
yeah. We are just
weird.
living in cloud cuckoo land on
Yeah.
this. What do you think is going to happen? I've got an idea what will happen, but what do you think
With
will happen?
what? With what? What part of it?
Just all of it. What does the short to mid term future like hold in terms of who's going to be prime minister,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
direction they want to
Yeah.
take, the
So,
policies they want to lay out.
yeah. So I think I would say probably Rishi or
Mm,
Boris. Or it could be Penny, but something will have to change. They'll have
yeah.
to. Boris will have to withdraw for that to happen.
Mm,
Um, and if it's Boris, God forbid,
mm,
then I think we'll get lots of we'll go back basically to the agenda he had before. There'll be lots of announcements and very little activity,
yeah.
and it'll be interesting to see if he dare replace Hunt as Chancellor,
Mm,
or keep him. I think it'll be interesting to see if any of them do that because they may be afraid of spooking the markets again.
mm, mm,
The other thing is that if he does come back, who will serve? Who will be in his cabinet, and will they follow the whip? Because I think quite a few, possibly a few dozen, may actually resign the whip and sit as independents and refuse to
really
serve with Boris. So Boris comes back, he could have a small majority or little or no majority, in effect,
interesting.
depending on if they actually follow through with that or if they just sort of grit their teeth and
Yeah.
welcome him back. So that's one scenario. Then I think the other, for me, is if Rishi wins. Well, the thing is, we know what he was going to do.
Mm,
So would he put back all of the tax rises? Because
mm.
Hunt's not cancelled all of them.
No, there was one or two that slipped through, so
Uh,
they'd already been started going
and,
through
and
Parliament.
what on
Then, didn't
earth? And what on earth is Rishi's, agenda for growth? Or does he even have one?
they? Mm,
So there's not going to be a big debate between whoever, whether it's just him or they have a top two or whatever. But
mm,
so I don't think
mm,
we're going to learn very much. We're not going to get the chance to have him set out what he would do. I
mm.
guess he did that 7 or 8 weeks ago. But
Yeah.
so if we have Rishi, I think in my mind we'll get somebody who's basically competent.
Mm,
But you know, it's not necessarily going to deliver anything new that will actually help people in the short term.
mm,
It feels still like the agenda of the past, the globalist agenda,
mm,
and I think it boils down to billionaire or clown again, which is
mm.
not a great. It's just not a great look, is it?
No, no. Yeah, you're buggered, aren't you? Either way, it's.
Yeah,
I was watching something the other day. I can't remember, I think it was one of the morning news
mm,
shows, and they were talking about obviously Labour's leading the polls at
yeah,
that point, and they said, look, would they even be dented if
mm,
Rishi got in or whoever? Would they be able to swing it back? And the answer is obviously
hmm,
probably not. But
yeah,
then the presenter, I think, made a really good follow up point, which was, what why do Labour even want to be in government with what's coming
Yeah.
down the line anyway? I mean, it's like you're right, because what you just said
Yeah.
there, like nothing's going to change. Let's face it,
Yeah.
there's a massive hole in the public finances. No matter who sits in
Yeah.
number 10 or number 11, they've got to find a way of filling that massive hole.
Mm.
You know, Jeremy Hunt may be considered a stabilising force into the markets, but the man is an absolute Tory through and
Mm.
through. You know, and I mean that in the sense that low tax, small state. He and I think the little person be damned from his perspective. When you look at what he did with the
Mm.
NHS and some of the things he did
Yeah.
there, he's hated, universally hated, by anyone remotely connected in the NHS. Um,
Mm.
so it's a problem because even if Rishi did come in, I quite like Rishi
Yeah.
Sunak. I think he often talks a lot of
Mm.
sense. And I also think he comes across as somebody that, even though his world is completely different to mine, a lot of the time he
Yeah.
comes across as someone who you feel like he's kind of got the best interests of the country at heart.
Yes.
But what can anyone do? Because it feels like the markets have decided we are not a safe bet anymore. And it feels like they're
Yeah.
almost dictating policy now. And I said this the other day: are we really in a position where we're letting the markets decide the fate
Well,
of our
I mean, that
country?
was the whole of the Osborne era,
Mm,
and that's why we had austerity, and they were terrified of the markets then, and they're back to it now.
mm,
I don't know. I mean, I kind of agree with Anne Widdecombe, who said a few days ago that they need to brazen it out and where's their backbone. Um,
mm, mm.
that if you're going to do
Okay.
something, whether like the trust agenda or whatever it is,
Yeah.
I think a lot of these short-term moves then cause panic, and
Yeah.
then I imagine what happens is people in the city, which is a kind of old boys club,
Yeah.
phone their mates who are MPs and people in the media and put the pressure on straight away.
Yeah.
And if you fold and respond to that, then of course they're going to get their way.
Yeah.
But if you didn't, if you actually brazened it out, I mean, obviously there were problems with pensions and other things that the Bank of England had to step in. But if you brazen it out, then even over a period of a few weeks, it could be better. It depends what the forces are, because I remember when we had Black Wednesday, way back now in the 90s, and George Soros, who's still around,
Hmm.
bet against the pound, and he had big deep pockets, and he did that over weeks and weeks and weeks.
Mm,
And so even though they tried to brazen it out, they couldn't. I think
mm.
that's the wound that is why they are so afraid still.
Yeah.
Is memories of that time.
I
But
think.
that's different. That was one guy who wasn't alone, but that was one guy. One set of forces trying to achieve bet against the pound, make a profit. It's
Mm,
not clear to me that was going on this time. But we didn't have
mm,
long enough. I mean, within a few days, they panicked, and then the pressure was on, and then Truss was out. But she
mm.
wasn't the MP's choice, so maybe that was always
Yeah.
going to happen as soon as it got difficult.
Yeah.
Um, will any of them be the MP's choice? Well, I don't know. Maybe Rishi looks like likely to get the most votes, so
Yeah.
perhaps he'd
Yeah.
be the best option.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've said this before. We've got to stop thinking the markets as this sort of computer-like benevolent effect. This
Mm,
is a small group of people who know each other,
mm.
whose opinion, whose perception
Yeah.
of what's going on, affects ordinary people's lives
Absolutely.
as much
Yeah.
as we allow it to. Um,
Yeah.
so
That is a scary thought, isn't it? Because you're right. I mean, if the general consensus is that the West has to go on a belt tightening spree because of the war in Ukraine and everything else, and if the governments have no choice but to kind of go along with it because the markets say it has to
mm,
happen,
mm,
that's such a big
yeah,
issue, isn't it? It was Mervyn King, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was yesterday.
yes,
Came out in the papers, and he said something like, we have to get used to the fact that we're going to have lower living standards because we've chosen to back Ukraine. And
yeah,
I thought about that. I was like, bloody hell, yeah. I guess
yeah,
he's right.
absolutely.
Mm,
Yeah,
but then, mm, yeah,
so I think that's an important point. Not just Ukraine. There's COVID,
mm,
and then there's the energy price bailout cap scheme.
yeah.
All of these are like 50, 100 billion plus
It's a lot of money.
enterprises. It's still a lot of money, yeah, even for the whole country. But yeah, we are at war, even if we
Mm,
are not sending our army,
hmm.
our navy,
The
our
proxy war is very
air
much in
force.
effect right now.
We are
Yeah.
spending billions on it, and it's costing us tens of billions in effects. And so I think Mervyn King is right. And the idea that this wouldn't cost a fortune. Yeah, I mean that's just sort of woolly thinking that we could just get it through sanctions, or sanctions wouldn't have. I mean, a lot of this is sanctions having the effect of raising our cost of living.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still curious though, because again, the voice of hope for me is Danny Blanchflower. He's and this other guy, is it Richard Murphy? I think it is. I can't remember. Another economist, and they keep saying the cost of everything is actually massively coming down. So the cost of commodities, everything is coming down, and it will bleed through
in the long
eventually.
run. In the long run.
And he's talking next year.
Before, and some of the effects will be seen sooner, but I think some of it will take longer than that to filter back through, because there's multi-year lags on some of these things. But if you look at containers, the shipping costs are right back down. In general, I think the price of food had halved over 20 years from 2000 to 2020 before COVID.
Really?
Yeah. As a real terms percentage of the average
that's
income.
huge. That's huge.
Yeah. So now what hasn't halved, what's gone the other way, is energy, housing. Anyone with a mortgage or rent, obviously. In that.
Bloody housing. We keep coming back to it, don't we?
Taxes have gone up a bit. The highest burden. But so people are. So the big ticket items have gone up a lot. Cost of fuel in your car, public transport, and of course there's the big debate at the moment about the triple lock on the pensions.
Pensions,
Is it ethical to give pensioners a 10% plus increase? Whatever it's going to be, it might be 12% now. When
the rest of
most people aren't getting it, and what you're doing is you're. I think it's close now to being greater than the universal credit, or so there's big changes in where the value of the state pension used to be quite small, and then it's grown and grown and grown and grown, because the cumulative effect of the triple lock over years, decades, increases.
Right, still not great though. Our public pension, it's pretty.
No, I'm not saying that it is, but it's the cost is huge. I mean,
the aging population is a massive issue.
Is it 110, 120 billion? I'll have a look.
Is it really? God, that much? That is terrifying, because we're not getting any younger. We are genuinely not getting any younger.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. So let's switch over here. There we go.
Wow. 150 billion.
That was probably last year. 21, 22. So that's I think that's the second biggest after the NHS. So that's the second biggest.
After the NHS. Do you think it's worth getting to the point though? And again, I know this will be very objectionable, but we're actually looking at the point now where universal programs, to a degree, may have to be looked at in some way, shape, or form. Because let's face it, I think everyone can get the public pension, can't they? Regardless if they've got, as long as they've paid in their national insurance
if you've
for enough years, if you qualify. But it's not means tested, is it? It's not like if you've got a private pension, you lose part of your public pension.
No, it is taxed, but it's not means tested. Yeah, it's tax. It's tax relief while you contribute, and then taxed when you take it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right.
So you pay basic or higher rate tax on your when you draw your pension, depending on how much your pension is.
The levels, yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
But that may not be true of the state pension. I think the state pension is just a flat amount.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Yeah, because to be fair, it's not great, but it's not horrific. You think if you paid off your mortgage, hopefully by that point, and hopefully you've got some other assets that you might be all right, then that pension is actually an okay amount of money to be receiving every month. But is it getting to the point now where they're actually going to have to look at it and go, if you've got a private pension that pays out X, you no longer qualify?
I don't know, but the cost, if the cost keeps going up, we just keep borrowing more.
Yeah, that's what Gordon Brown did.
The lower the pound will be, and the less less our money will buy. Now that's offset to some extent by globalization. But it's also relative to other countries who become poorer. I mean, I agree with you. Pensioners aren't paid a state pension is not much to live off, particularly with the high cost of living at the moment, and universal credit is also not much to live off.
It's not, is it, at all?
But if we're going to increase those, we've got to decrease something.
Yeah, there's nothing to cut though. There is nothing to cut. Yeah. What's the NHS budget?
Oh, it's a fast.
It's huge,
Let's have
isn't
a
it?
look. Yeah, it's probably up to 150, 200. Let's have a look. Here we are. Yep, there we go.
Wow.
That's the problem. That's doubled in.
Huge amount of money.
Well, I don't know over what period, but it's been increasing. I mean, it's increased a lot over COVID.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Now, the answer to the NHS has always been spend more money,
Mm.
but it hasn't delivered the outcomes. In fact, the outcomes
No.
have got worse.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a strong believer that whilst money is needed for some things, the NHS is full of wonderful people, but a completely broken system. Having experienced it firsthand with family members myself, you have, complete handover mess of information being lost and
Yeah.
documents not being able to be found, and family, friends, and relatives having to tell staff what's wrong with the person, and what food they should have, and what they need, and if you ever get transferred between hospitals, the systems don't connect.
Yeah.
And then endless waiting, hours and hours and hours, of days and days and days for the right prescriptions or the right doctor to come around, or the right consultant to see you. And I think a lot of that is down to, yes, there's shortage of staff in particular specialities, but a lot of it's down to the model, which is you have these shifts of these teams of consultants, doctors and nurses on different shifts, and they rotate, and they have to hand over constantly all the time.
Yeah.
And you have a very hierarchical top-down management design. And I think you could, irrespective of the budget, to putting the money to one side, you could run it a lot better. Other countries do, and they have various models. They're not exactly the same as ours, but there's plenty to choose from that work better, particularly in Europe. And so it would be wonderful to fix some of that. And of course, a big problem in hospitals at the moment is the failure of social care, because that's if the NHS is bad, that's like the NHS but not funded really well at all, and it's proving very difficult to get people out of hospital into the care they used to.
There's nowhere for them to go.
And we've got rid of all these places. We used to have convalescent homes. We used to have various cottage and local hospitals. We used to have places that people could go and get better. They didn't need masses of medical care to get them out of the hospital quickly.
Yeah.
There used to be hospitals for separate things like infectious diseases. There used to be much more specialisation. So now it's become a bit of a factory. They try and get them in and out as quick as possible, but they get blocked in there. And so a lot of this, you could always need more money, but we're getting to the point where we can't afford, we're already borrowing hugely for all the things we're paying for everywhere at the moment. So it would be great to look at the system, but the NHS is so big and so political that it's always been a lack of opportunity. There's no party that can change it. There's no desire to change it. It's full of egg on your face. And the Tories won't change it because they're terrified of being branded as the party that doesn't care about the NHS and wants to privatise it and all of that. And these problems I'm talking about, they're not to do with public-private ownership. I mean, there is a load of private services provided via the NHS. NHS frequently pays for people to go into private hospitals to have operations. There's good and bad in all of that, but there's this false argument over is one better or the other, when actually what's wrong is the overall system, the thing that's actually governing the structure of management and how people work, and just very basic things that you do. In any organisation you'd have, like IT, that told you what this patient needed, and you could send it to somebody else in the hospital, or the ability to get so I think you could do a huge amount. You could make it customer led or sort of patient led, so if you looked at it from the patient's point of view, how do I provide a good service to this patient, rather than looking at it from the hospital's point of view, how do I process as many patients as I can in the way that's most efficient for me. You could make tremendous change, but Conservatives won't do it and Labour won't do it because it's such a Labour is just so wedded to the NHS as their thing that they're created, their baby. They're not going to change it. They couldn't go in any direction that changed it fundamentally.
No, I think I agree with everything that you just said, and it's actually really it's a worry, isn't it? Really, because how long do you keep feeding the beast that isn't doing what you want it to do? Like most people, I'm a massive supporter of the NHS. I think it's an amazing institution, and yet at the same time, I know it's got so many gaping wounds in it that you just don't know how you're going to heal them. I was a friend of mine is in hospital at the moment,
Yeah.
and I went to visit him. He's in a London hospital. I went to visit him Friday,
Yeah.
and you just walk through, and the hospital looks in some places like it's full into bits. He's been very complimentary about some of the care and very, very scathing about some other bits of the care as well. For exactly what you said, they're not joined up. There's not enough time. There's all these things. So I agree. You made one key point there, and I agree with that. And I've always said this: whenever people go into the public versus private debate, I always say that's the wrong debate. The debate is the outcomes. So if the outcome is that X amount of people, sorry, that the British public get free healthcare at the point of need,
Yeah.
I don't think, if you're smart, it makes no sodding difference to me how that happens, as long as they get the outcome, they don't have to pay for it through their checkbook at that point. That's it,
absolutely.
isn't it?
I think everyone agrees on that.
Yeah, well, yeah, but this, like you said, it's the fear mongering, isn't it, from
Yeah.
the left, the very fear mongering, and sometimes justifiably so. And on the right, there is still that little bit. I mean, if you look at some of the privatised aspects of healthcare, again, I don't think we have a wide enough viewership to get sued here. But when you look at some of the, I think some of the social care stuff that's taken care of by private providers, they've also been labelled as absolutely shocking, like absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
So when private companies do try and take over aspects of the NHS, it does seem that it doesn't always work any better at all. Yeah.
Well,
So
I think that's generally the case, that you can get good and bad private and good and bad public.
100%.
You've just got to be good at weeding out the bad and embracing the good.
Is it? Are we missing something? Where did you and I talk about this in one of our maybe we did talk about, and I think did I mention about the idea of rewarding good health rather than healing bad? Did I mention about that?
I don't think we did. I think this
No.
worth
So
talking about.
just an idea. So if somebody like me, say like, okay, I'm say a stone overweight. Say my BMI is slightly too high. My body fat percentage is slightly too high. It doesn't cause me any health issues at the moment. I'm just probably, if you looked at me, you wouldn't go he was fat or anything like that. You just think he's a 40-odd-year-old guy that's starting to get a little bit of middle-aged timber. That's what happens with life. But obviously, it's something I'm trying to do something about. What if we did prevention rather than cure? So if we reverse the model somewhat and said, right, Jamie, if you get your body fat percentage down to X and you get your BMI down to Y, at the end of the year, you would get, say, a cash payment of £2,000 or something like that. So we incentivise the behaviours that we want. Because if you look at when the NHS was actually established, 70 years ago, 80 years ago?
1948. So
we were a very different breed of people in terms of our overall. We're better off in many ways now, health-wise, but let's face it, our obesity is absolutely off the charts in comparison to what it was. We don't take care of ourselves at all.
Yeah.
We eat crap food all the time. You know, we smoke a lot, we drink a lot, we do all these types of things. So
yes, prevention.
It's almost like so we built it for back then. That world doesn't exist anymore.
We're in a different world now. On that note, have a look at this.
Ooh.
Now that only goes up to 2017. It's grown a lot since then, but that's adjusted for inflation.
Wow.
So when it started, it was a relatively small amount.
That is a tiny amount.
In today's money, it would be about 13 billion, which would be about a third defence budget.
That's tiny.
And now that figure is 220. Well, that was I think last year. So, as you say, it's grown to do far more than it ever was originally doing. With there's far many more people, of course, but which is one of the factors behind that growth. But I think you're right. Prevention over cure. I mean, it's the same argument with the police, but let's not go into that. You want to prevent crime, not
we'll be here forever.
Just catch criminals.
We'd be here forever on that one. Yeah.
But in health, I think you could do a lot. You could do a lot of innovative things like that. And why not pay people if it actually works to change their behaviour? Yeah.
Same with mental health as well.
Yeah, a lot more you could do than simply paying them. Setting up incentives to avoid problems being caused in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the health budget now with the COVID increases is the same as other European countries as a percentage, but the outcomes are not. So
we're still world leading in some ways, though, aren't we? I remember seeing a study that compared
in certain treatments and conditions and operations. But we
lag behind in others. I think our
we lag
cancer
behind.
survival rates are very low, aren't they, or something like that? They're
Uh,
not great.
yeah, well, we're poor in cancer survival. We're very poor in screening.
Mm.
So we do far less screening and check. So in many European countries, you are regularly, men and women regularly get a battery of tests applied to screen them for lots
That's a
of things,
great idea.
to
Yeah,
catch them early because they
yeah,
realise that in the long run that will
saves
be.
money.
But that's because there was a capital investment over a long period in the machines and the
Mm.
systems and the training to support that.
Mm.
We're low on that. We're low on beds because we
Yeah,
got into this mindset of like a drive-through. Get them
yeah,
in, give them the op, give them a day to
yeah,
recover, chuck them out, but there's nowhere for them to go.
yeah.
And we closed too many beds with a growing population. We shouldn't have done that anyway.
Mm.
And obviously the staffing problems because it's poor conditions, not brilliant pay, but of course Brexit and COVID have had a huge negative effect on staff.
Huge.
And now people are quitting because of the pressures, sustained pressures.
Yeah. And
So,
you don't
so
blame them.
that those are all other problems too that need sorting out. But given how important it is and how much we spend on it, I think this. If only we could have a party that weren't afraid to tackle this, that could.
Yeah.
And I think this is how I start many of my conversations about politics these days. Is that if only there was a party that. Because I don't see it in the Lib Dems, I don't see it in the Greens, I don't
Yeah.
see a credible
Yeah.
alternative that would actually focus on these things or do these things.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I mean, let's face it, most often nowadays, between Tories and Labour, there's a paper wedge. That's all there really is between them.
They've got the same policies more and more. I mean, we've now got the same energy policy, energy cap policy as Labour proposed, really.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They'll have to have the same spending constraints as well. They have to do, everything
Well,
will
now
be the
they
same.
will. I think it'd be interesting to see if Labour actually. So there's an opportunity, which I think they won't take. The opportunity is to set out an ambitious, different agenda, which is to say to people, when you get a chance to vote for us, this is what we will actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
they won't do
given
that.
our current position, they won't do that because they don't need to, and they think they've got it in the bag. And when they think they've got it in the bag, either of these parties don't make any effort. So you are likely to see change on the Tory front because they'll think, as long as they don't think they're doomed. If they think they're doomed, they won't bother. But if they think they could turn it around, there will be some frantic, energetic push in some direction or other, which may or may not be good. But Labour, if they're riding high in the polls and they're way above, they'll probably
don't rock the boat.
We don't need
don't
the
rock the
job's
boat.
done. I mean, I saw that I couldn't believe that at the conference, the Labour Party conference. It was it was almost like victory. It's so complacent. I mean, you probably win, but that's because the other side are so bad.
So bad at what they're doing.
It's not because you're brilliant.
Yeah.
It's not because you're great.
Yeah, but I think I agree with you. I do agree with you. But I think this in some ways they're almost like quite in touch with the common person, aren't they? Right now, and what I mean by that is, as long as you get a job, as long as you can pay your mortgage, as long as you've got energy coming through that doesn't bankrupt you every month, as long as food doesn't bankrupt you either, we are happy to go along. To get along, to go along. That we are, and maybe that's just me, but I certainly think most people now are exhausted. They're exhausted by the Brexit fiasco. They're exhausted by COVID, and they're exhausted. They just want a normal life where I can put a roof over my kids' heads, have a beer with my friends or a wine with my friends, and that's it. I don't want big things. Whereas I think if Labour are clever, they'll play the renewables card really well and go, this will be a net asset to everyone. This will bring wealth into the country. This will do all these things. Then hopefully, but go back to your point, because it was a great point. Can the Tories turn it around? We have a wonderful chance here, Tom, to see to live in this kind of like multiversal theory. Let's just say if Boris Johnson got in. Let's just say Boris got back in.
Yeah, I think it's quite likely. Yeah.
What could he do to return the polls around that doesn't because austerity won't do it. Austerity is not going to close that gap. What can he do?
He'd probably have to push hard on one of his big 2019 pledges. So maybe Brexit, bonfire of the laws, but create some new opportunities. He'd want to push hard on infrastructure, so maybe he'd embrace the green revolution. But the problem with the renewables is renewables don't work unless you have storage.
Yeah.
Intermittent. So in fact,
Yeah,
if we push headlong into renewables, and we already are, but if we accelerate it,
yeah,
it will create huge problems because you won't have the base load to support the intermittent
yeah.
storage and
There's no way we get rid of
intermittent
fossil
generation.
fuels. Yeah,
And if you can't rely on the connectors from Europe, which we don't know if we can rely on them in the winter, we'll find out.
right.
Then that intermittent supply of renewables is a big problem. I mean,
Yeah.
they're great in that they're cheap, and they're Although I do worry about security, so I haven't
Mm.
heard people talk about it. But what's to stop Russian submarines from cutting the power lines from the wind turbines in the North Sea,
Mm.
or indeed blowing them up? So there is a security aspect for offshore stuff.
That's a very good point. I didn't think about that.
But
No, I
I'm a
didn't
big
think about
fan.
that
I'm
at
a
all.
big fan of renewables, but you do need
Yeah,
storage, whether it's battery storage or hydro or other pump storage.
yeah, yeah,
Or you can't even it out, and if you can't even it out, so you either have a lot of storage or you have a lot of interconnections with other countries where the weather is different because they're a long way away.
yeah. Okay. So basically, you end up
That
feeding each other
that
over a
you can
period of
rely
time.
on, and we
Yeah.
don't really. We have a handful of connections to European countries that may shut them off if they can't get the gas this winter.
Mm.
But anyway, he could do something like that. He could say, "I'm going to have a huge push for renewable infrastructure, and it will be green."
Mm.
And I think he would be likely to do a green thing because that was a really big theme of his.
Yeah, it was.
But he
Yeah.
can't really do anything that involves lots of money.
No, exactly. No, no,
They
no.
haven't got
But
any.
you make the point a lot, and yeah, which I agree with. You talk about supply side reforms, okay?
Yes,
So a lot of
yes,
this stuff
yes,
doesn't
yes.
necessarily involve big government expenditure, does
No,
it?
no.
It's yeah,
Yeah, we still haven't seen them.
reward
Yeah, yeah.
investment into renewables, reward
So
investment into scientists.
that would be the sensible thing, but I don't think he'll do that. The reason I don't think he'll do that is
Mm,
it's not sexy, and that is all in the difficult detail of
mm,
reshaping laws, regulations, policies, and incentives. Um, so he would, like free ports he liked because he could declare, you can point to a free port on a map and you can go there and visit it,
yeah,
and do a photo op, and you can say, "Here I am,
yeah,
wonderful free port that we've created in this area. Will it be great?" And they
yeah,
have they're still doing that, and I'm sure they'll have some effect. But I don't think anything in regulation is going to be what Boris focuses on. Maybe other people could get it done under him
mm, mm,
if they had the freedom or were left alone. But he will go for some big physical symbol, like
yeah,
maybe like wind turbines,
yeah.
new nuclear power stations, that sort of stuff.
See, so many
I would
people I
guess.
know, so many people I know were celebrating when Boris was, chucked out the window. If you like, I didn't
Yeah.
celebrate. I didn't celebrate because, and I think I said this to you before. He's a populist, and the
Yes.
beautiful thing about a populist is he does things that are popular, and if they're
Yeah.
popular, it
Well.
means most people want them. So that's
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's the green thing, all the rest of it, and I
Yeah.
like that because I felt that he wouldn't go down that ideological line.
That's
He
true,
was,
but
yeah.
I think the problem is he was great at announcing those things. He was great at
Mm.
publicising those
The
things. He was
follow
great
through
at
was
talking about it.
dreadful.
There was no
Yeah.
follow through, and a lot of
The
them,
hospitals.
like the hospitals, a lot of them were double accounting.
Yeah,
Not really building 40 new hospitals. I think it was
yeah,
6. Um, there were just some new buildings on existing hospital grounds,
yeah,
which is important, but they were re-announced and they were previously done before he even came to
yeah.
power. So I wouldn't mind Boris if he got. So I liked that populist aspect of. I mean, I
Mm,
like the idea that somebody could do something different, and
mm,
his ability to do something different came from his populism and his charisma and all that.
yeah,
But only if he followed through. And there were two ways he could have followed through. One was to actually knuckle down and focus a bit on the detail, discipline himself, which didn't happen. And the
mm,
other way would have been to have let
yeah,
other people do that, which also didn't happen. Because
yeah.
he constantly pushed them in different directions and reacted to the media. So for me, he's proved he can't do it. I don't think he'll change. And if we have him
Mm.
again, I think it will be a disaster. He'll be out again on some scandal.
Do you
Which
think so?
probably hasn't
Yeah,
even happened yet. Yeah, yeah. Or we'll just have 2 years of nothing much changing, but lots of
yeah,
noise. And like you say,
yeah,
people are tired of that. So
yeah.
I hope it's not him. Now, Liz
Mm,
Truss wanted to change things more radically than
mm,
Boris did, and she certainly didn't have the charisma. But
mm,
that again was like, oh, okay, maybe this could work. This is a different way of doing it. But she didn't
mm,
didn't have the mandate, didn't command the support, couldn't get
mm,
people to follow her, and executed it really badly. I mean,
mm.
communication was so bad. as
It
to
was
growth
shocking, wasn't
problems. Yeah,
it?
which is
Yeah.
why you have the market meltdown.
Do you
So,
think?
could somebody else, could
Well,
Penny Mordaunt do it? Maybe, I don't know, but how many people do you try?
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do you think though that there is any way that we can avoid this painful period that everybody is? I'm not talking about the recession. I think that's pretty much baked in anyway. It was inevitable, with
Yeah,
interest rates going up so high, so all
yeah,
the supply chain. It's just everything that's gone wrong. Eventually, we were going to take a big hit. It was always going to
yeah.
happen. But do you think there's because the idea of going back to 2008 to
I know.
2014 or whatever it was, or
Yeah,
just and it was 2014 onwards. It didn't feel so bad, but
yeah,
2008 2012 felt horrible for so many
yeah,
people for so long. The world
yeah,
felt grim. It felt really grim.
yeah.
Is there a way for that to be avoided? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
I
tough,
mean, I'm sure it could be done with really competent leadership and innovative ideas, and Bank of England um, sorting out their interest rate policy, so they're not, they're catching up rapidly now. Because you see in the States, they pushed it up, the Fed have pushed it up, and now inflation's coming down and things are improving. And you can see the cycle happening much more quickly, whereas we're going to get
right,
stuck in this high debt, high tax, low spending austerity.
right,
Um,
right. With you.
I don't know the specifics of how they could do it, but we don't. I don't see anybody who looks like that.
No.
Unless Rishi is suddenly as prime minister is going to suddenly be different.
I'd love to see it.
I
I
mean,
would, as
I guess we have
yeah,
to hope for that, and
yeah.
like
As I say to you all the time, I grew up in a Labour household. I
yeah,
normally would prefer a Labour government, but ultimately, I want whatever government's in power to succeed because I want the
yeah,
best
yeah,
economy and the best
yeah,
country that
exactly,
we can have.
exactly,
And
yeah,
it's weird. I've always had a little bit of faith in Sunak because I think he did a really good job with furlough. I thought he did a brilliant job with furlough.
yeah,
I thought that was a game-changing moment in the sense that I've had arguments with people who've gone, oh, well, I didn't bloody
yeah,
receive any, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, no, but you had an economy to walk back
yeah,
into.
yeah,
If he hadn't done
yeah,
that,
yeah,
everyone would have bloody lost their job, their business would have gone
yeah,
under, and it would have been a
yeah.
disaster. What
And
he did was create that bridge, and it was
yeah,
brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So if he had some vision about something like that, and
yeah,
like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be big money, but it could be this is going to be our focus. We're going to change this, we'll tweak this, we'll do that, and it will
yeah,
feed
yeah.
through.
But or
Brilliant,
is
hope so.
he like Gordon Brown in other respects? When he gets there, he won't have a clue what he wants to do.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
Sunak would be a great Labour chancellor. Um,
interesting. Yeah, interesting. No, that's an interesting point. Yeah, that's
but
an interesting point.
wrong party. But again,
Yeah,
so billionaire or no, not the clan, but we'll have a billionaire. Well, all right, yeah,
yeah,
great. It's not
yeah,
Trump. Better than Trump. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Better than
yeah.
Boris, probably.
Can you imagine if like he did pull he pulled the rabbit out of the hat, or he did some bit of magic where he he rustled up a free trade agreement and free movement agreement with, for example, like America or something like that,
Yeah,
something really big that people would go, wow, that is one hell of an accomplishment. Just
maybe.
something where yeah,
I think though I would prefer something. I don't really think that that's what most people care about. I would prefer something down to earth and at home
yeah,
that affected ordinary people's lives. Like
mm,
like we said, if he could tackle the NHS, sort
mm,
out social care properly, because Boris sort of fudged a bit and made a few things, and now they've repealed that tax rise.
yeah,
Um, and they've done a bit on care costs, capping the care costs at 80,000. Although that's not. There's rumours that's going to be delayed a year.
right,
It's a partial solution. So yeah, he could do stuff like that. Maybe reform inheritance tax in such a way that actually really
mm,
help people. I don't know.
mm,
But more ordinary people, I think, would just want lower prices, stable
yeah,
prices,
yeah,
um, and I don't think they want no change, because I think you're right that if you're getting by, then you probably want stability and no change. And
yeah,
but if you're not getting by, if you're struggling, I think you desperately want someone to come up with
yeah,
something, right?
something amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Um,
I agree.
I
I've
just not.
seen.
Maybe I'm blind, but I don't see that in him. Um,
Mm, mm,
we've
I agree.
had the
Yeah.
crazy plan that didn't work.
Yeah, crazy plan Mark B. God knows what that
Yeah,
would
yeah,
be.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she reminded me. She looked. She reminded me of Roadrunner.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh God, wasn't it painful just seeing her talk though? Even just
Yeah,
Like,
but
you just look at this
I kind
person.
of got. I didn't mind that. So I really have a lot of time for people who are not like not charismatic speakers, but actually get
Yeah,
stuff done. I really
yeah,
don't like the Cameron style.
yeah.
Um,
The Tony
Boris
Blairs.
is
Yeah,
like that, but likable in the way he does it. But
yeah, yeah,
I don't like the fact that he can't back it up.
yeah. Oh, I'm with you. Yeah,
Blair, I think, could have done it, but went
yeah.
horribly wrong. Um,
Mm,
that was
mm.
Blair was probably the biggest waste of talent because he didn't achieve what he could have achieved.
They did some good things,
They
but
did
yeah,
some
you're
good
right.
things, but it
Yeah,
just went off the rails, and maybe that was because of the fights within the party and stuff we didn't see.
yeah,
But
yeah. And then the global crisis hitting,
yeah,
wiped everyone out.
actually,
Yeah,
if you listen to the old ex prime ministers, Gordon Brown makes a hell of a lot more sense than almost all of them. Um,
right. Yes, yeah.
and it was he was kind of probably the biggest disappointment of all
Mm,
because
yeah.
he
Smart
seemed to
man.
be a good, smart man. He's the only one that hasn't gone off and made a fortune out of
Yeah,
speeches and media appearances and stuff.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Sitting on the non-exec board of Goldman Sachs, for
he
example. Yeah,
just didn't know what he wanted to. Didn't seem to have a clue what to do when he became prime minister.
yeah, yeah. And then the wheels fell off
And then
spectacularly.
he was hit by the he was
Yeah,
unlucky. Um,
yeah. Very unlucky. Yeah,
but
but he didn't have a vision, did he?
having had to wait so long, Labour are
Yeah.
never going to be in for that long.
Blair
So
screwed him over massively. Blair really did screw
mm,
him over in that. It depends on which side you believe, but
yeah,
it certainly sounds
yeah,
like he did. What was I going to say? There was I think what's starting to happen now, and it's interesting. This, I don't want to go too far off point on this, but you and I talk about politics and the different sides and culture
mm,
issues as well. But what I've started to see now, and I think I follow some left wing news sources, kind of new media
mm-hmm,
sources as
mm-hmm,
well,
yeah,
and one of them is a group called Novara Media, and
right,
they've actually been quite. I'd almost describe them as quite shrill. I think that's the best way I could
mm-hmm,
describe it. And then I've noticed over the last 5 or 6 years, from certain members of that group, like a calming of the
yeah,
waters. And one of their head guys now goes, I think, goes, and it was only a few months back. He goes, I think we on the left, I'm paraphrasing or doing it wrong, stuff like that, because we on the left, we have to realise that as long as most people feel all right, they don't care. As long as most people feel like they're doing okay, they're fine. That's what they won't. They don't. They'll give a nod to the radical stuff,
mm-hmm,
maybe, but they'll never be. They won't get out and vote for it.
yeah,
They won't take to the streets
yeah,
for it. As long
yeah,
as most people feel like they've got a chance,
mm,
that's it. And I think maybe that's the future of politics. Maybe that's what the world is going to be now, like for the next 20, 30 years in the UK. The
mm-hmm.
more stable you are, the more boring you are, the more you're going to win elections. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
Corbyn,
there's an argument for um, a smaller reach. I'm not trying to say libertarian, but I'm not
yeah.
meaning that. But there's an argument that government controls less of our lives because of
Mm,
technology. Because I mean, really, what's happened is we've had a technological revolution that you can earn money in a way that doesn't depend on other people. You can communicate in ways that you can do things that governments couldn't do 50 years ago. Um,
mm,
so you could argue that government should be about less reach into people's lives, but
mm,
focusing it where you need it the
mm.
most. Um,
That's an
and that
interesting
could be,
idea.
yeah. So I can see that sort of happening naturally through. In other words, government's becoming less relevant because
Yeah.
the levers of power, which we've always debated, are they actually connected to anything? But down
Mm,
here,
mm.
um, those levers are getting less and less effective. Um,
That's very true. Yeah, that is very, very true. That
and
is
obviously,
interesting. That's an interesting idea.
the rise of massive corporations through globalizations has
Mm.
also made them more powerful than many governments. So there's a
And
whole
that's a
argument
problem.
there, but I still think
Yeah.
you should try and fix whatever government can help with, and it certainly
Yeah.
can help an awful lot. I mean, the answer is not the free market, we know that,
Yeah.
um, and the answer is not communism, we know
Yeah.
that. So we should still
Yeah.
be looking. What can we
Yeah.
do? What can we try? What can we improve?
Yeah.
Um,
That's a really good point.
and I think again, but I don't, do you ever? When was the last time you heard any of the politicians talking like that? I mean,
No, not as long as I can
occasionally,
remember.
some of the
Yeah.
backbench mavericks would, I remember, what's his name, Douglas Carswell,
Oh yeah.
who went from Conservative to UK. I mean, he had a book out on alternative forms of government, and alternative options. But it's these eccentric, weird figures that are not ever
Yeah.
going to be the ones that actually shape it that you will hear talking about it.
Mm.
It's not a mainstream topic. They don't even talk about the House of Lords, and that is a caricature. That is, if you think about it, that's appalling.
It is a boy. It's
And they've
absolutely
done nothing
shocking.
about it. I mean,
No.
Blair said he'd fix it, and he
Mm.
didn't, and that was mainly because no votes in it.
And there's a lot of money behind the House of Lords as well. A lot of
Yeah,
people with very deep pockets that if anyone, yeah, because let's face it, for a lot of people, it's their backup later on in life, isn't it, to get
yeah,
to the House of Lords?
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I remember my old
go on.
MP in my last area, where I lived in Kent.
Mm,
I helped the local MP campaign. I wasn't a supporter of the Tories, but he was a Tory MP,
yeah,
and I messaged him to moan about the trains, and then he said, "Do you want to meet for a beer and talk about it?" I went, bit weird, but okay, go on then. Yeah, we did, and I ended up like helping him
yeah,
campaign. My
yeah.
man must have been a master persuasion expert. But he, when we were talking about some of the stuff, and I mentioned the
Yeah.
House of Lords, he went, "Jamie, we all know they're a massive problem. None of us has got a bloody clue what to do about it, though. And I've heard certain things since then, like different ideas. But you're right, no one's even talking about that anymore. Isn't that weird? That is
Yeah,
odd.
yeah. I mean, the only reforms that happen are the bad ones, like the expenses scandal leading to this massively
Yeah,
expensive, overly bureaucratic monitoring watchdog. When the real lesson would have been, don't give them expenses, just give them enough money that they can pay for
yeah,
their own stuff.
exactly. That we made it way too complicated
Yeah,
again, didn't we?
and you
Yeah,
save like 20, 30 million overnight. I think the
yeah.
budget's something like 20 million
That's
for
a
the
lot of money, isn't it?
whatever is it IPSO or whatever it's called,
Mm.
parliamentary. Let's have a look. Parliamentary expenses. IPSA. It's called.
IPSA, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. 19.7 million.
Bloody hell. It's not bad.
By the look of it. I have the right figure. Well, I'm not sure that's the right figure actually.
Right. Either way, that's still quite a significant amount of money for only a few hundred people to burn through regularly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
Is there a chance though is there a wild card? Do you think Nigel Farage and Reform Party? Do you think they got a
Well,
chance of
so
getting
so
votes?
I think Farage, who ironically is arguably the most successful politician of the last 70 years after Churchill,
Mm,
because not through
mm.
becoming in office, but through uh, achieving his campaign without achieving his
Yeah.
aim without actually having to get into office.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think he could. He is popular enough to lead a party of some size,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure he would win an election. In a proportional system, he would have a good
Definitely
share of
have some
votes.
seats. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I
Absolutely, yeah.
think from what I saw before with
Sorry, there's a
UKIP.
massive storm just kicking off now. I wouldn't
All
surprise me
right,
if all my power goes down soon. It wouldn't
all right.
surprise me at
Well,
all because
I
that
hope
was
not.
just over the road.
Yeah. So if you go back to UKIP days and Brexit Party days, there was an awful lot of infighting, and I got the impression
Mm,
that he doesn't play well with other people. He's a good one-man band,
yeah,
so
yeah,
probably being in the media where he is now is the right place for him.
yeah. He can still
Um,
swing public opinion, can't he? That's the thing.
yeah, and a lot of people hate him, and
Mm,
so. But I think there's nothing to stop a popular person who doesn't have that baggage coming
yeah,
forward to lead a party. I don't think the
yeah.
Reform Party is it at the moment, but and I would really like to see the appearance of new parties on the right and the left.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that is the long-term solution, but it's very difficult
Mm,
for new parties to emerge in this country.
mm,
There's lots of good things about the system.
very difficult. Yeah,
We used to claim it was stable. You didn't have like Italian-style hung
yeah.
parliaments and
Government every
coalitions that
six
fell
months.
apart.
Yeah.
We don't think we can really make that claim anymore.
No, we
But
can't. We've proven it's about. Yeah, it just doesn't work anymore, does it?
but
It's like, oh right, fair enough.
it does create majorities that can get stuff done.
Get stuff done, but
Now they
nothing
may not
gets
do
done.
the right thing.
Yeah.
They may execute badly.
Mm,
It has those advantages, and it
mm.
does stop extreme
Yeah.
parties getting in. So
Yeah.
I think the
Absolutely.
main reason we don't have, I mean, people who are very fond of proportional representation, I always say to them, you do realise that the reason we don't have the National Front,
Yeah.
BNP, A situation or Alternative for Deutschland or the Five
Yeah,
Star Party, all these parties that have now 15, 20, 25%
yeah,
in Italy and France and Germany, in Holland as well. It's because we don't have proportional representation,
yeah,
and what that does is force you to have centre left, centre right parties
yeah,
in order to get elected. And I think there's a lot to be
yeah,
said for that. The trick would be, how do you change it so that you can still have new parties come through and grow
yeah,
within that?
yeah.
Um,
I totally, Jesus Christ, I totally get it.
oh,
So,
you're right.
yeah,
It's dramatic
yeah. It's
sometimes.
just, yeah, no, it's like it's really weird because obviously
Yeah,
where I live in Cambridgeshire, it's very flat, so there's no real
hmm,
hills or anything.
yeah.
So
You
it's
see
just
for miles.
literally
Yeah,
the
yeah.
sky is just getting ripped apart. It's very
Oh,
interesting,
crikey.
but maybe that's God telling us we've done enough for the night.
Yeah, I think we've awakened a sleeping giant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
But
All
yeah,
right.
so again, I think maybe we can have another one on political system. But
Yeah.
I just wish someone was talking about that. We never hear it. They're not
Mm,
interested. They don't want to reform.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
I
can't
know, and
even
also
repair the bloody building which is falling
yeah.
down
Thing is,
because they can't agree.
you and I know, or both know, budding and aspiring politicians. I think from
Yes.
our mutual background, and
Mm.
as much as they come to the table with passion, sometimes they don't always come with nuanced positions. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's always a problem with small parties. They tend to jump in with a
Well,
lot of heartfelt belief, but they
you
don't
have to.
always
I
have the
guess you have to have a voice. You have to make yourself heard. That requires you to shout loudly and have an extreme position of some sort to get noticed.
yeah.
So I have sympathy for that, even though it doesn't
Mm,
appeal to me.
so yeah.
But yeah, I think it is very difficult
Mm,
to achieve any kind of actual representation in Parliament. You can get a share of the popular vote, but it doesn't give you anything.
doesn't give you nothing.
Yeah,
Absolutely nothing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Anyway,
There we
yeah,
are.
need to
We've
go
corrected the
before you
world
get
again.
you get wiped off the face of the planet.
Yeah, I have visions of a bolt of lightning just coming through and taking me out.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that is pretty spectacular. Yeah, there
yeah.
we are.
Anyway, as ever, good talking to you, Jamie.
You too,
Until
indeed.
next time.
Yeah. See you then.
Cheerio.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.